Okay, we ready? Okay, on behalf of Beit Havaad of Lakewood, many of you know me. I want to thank for my time in the VHQ, but I want to thank Rav Dahan, a very old friend of mine, and somebody who was given chizuk to me over all the years. And Baruch Hashem, when I called him about this initiative of having a shiur, he was very, very enthusiastic. And Rabbi Babayev, who I've been chasing, thank you for your patience. And I just want to say in the Beit Havaad in Lakewood, so in this part of what we're doing is that in the years we were here, we were bringing kashrut. Now, Baruch Hashem, we're bringing, instead of what we put in our mouths, now we're worrying about what we do with our money. And it's important that people, there are a lot of halachot that people don't know. We've had shiurim here in Queens, the ribit, cash advance, which the rabbi didn't want to have a shiur on because he doesn't like it, so he doesn't want to promote it, which is 100%, I understand him, and I think he's right. But there's a lot of questions that come up in Choshen Mishpat in a daily life. Baruch Hashem, we have with us here today Rabbi Fried, who's one of the biggest Talmidei Chachamim that we have in our Kollel, in our Beit Din. Our Beit Din services, unfortunately, every day we're very busy, whether it's Lo Aleinu people getting divorced, and family issues, or business issues. But what we try to focus on in what we're doing is trying to bring the halachot of money to people in their day-to-day business, as I said. So for any of your business needs, whether it's heteriska, let's say a person's doing business with interest and he needs a document to help him do it the correct way, or a person that has questions. Baruch Hashem, we have a lot of Rabbanim in Queens who are big Talmidei Chachamim, but I find many times that even the Rabbanim, sometimes, not talking about Rabbi Dahan, he knows everything, but many Rabbanim in many communities, not only in Queens, they're not necessarily familiar with the intricate day-to-day laws of Choshen Mishpat. It's something which is, if you're not really involved in it, you're steeped in it, you've spent time on it. Yes, of course, we know the basic halachot: don't steal, don't lie, don't lend with ribit, don't, all different types of halachot we all know. But they're very, very intricate, they're very detailed. So if a person has a very detailed question that maybe his Rav is not so familiar with, so we're happy you can call us. We'll be happy to answer that question for you. If you want us to help you set up in business, if you have a business where you're dealing, let's say, questions of not only ribit, questions, let's say, of Shabbat. Let's say you have somebody that's working for you on Shabbat, or you have a business that somehow has to do with Shabbat. You have to speak to your rabbi exactly how you should be doing that, if you should be doing that. But let's say you have a question, how should I set it up? We get these questions all the time, especially in healthcare. People are nursing homes. People are open on Shabbat. They have workers. But these are all very, very important questions. And these are things that, let's say a person has real estate. He has a management company. How does that operate on Shabbat? All different types of things. Unfortunately, I did not bring enough, but I have a few cards over here. The Beit Havaad, we have a tefillah of Parnasah from the Shla Kadosh in Masechet Chulin. I will bring more to you later on in the day. Give me a list of everybody who was here, and it's a tefillah of Parnasah to remember that when you are learning, when you're doing your job, when you're trying to make money to the family, to be mefanes your mishpacha, and to get tzedakah, then of course we all know that it comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So I ask you to please pay attention to Rabbi Fried. He's a tremendous Talmidei Chacham and a very fine person. You'll be happy to get to know him just a little bit through the shiur. And Baruch Hashem, this is L'Hagdil Torah L'Adira, and we hope to have more connections in the future. Thank you. Yeah. Go ahead.
ברשות, כבוד הרב דהן שליטה, שמו הולך לפניו, it's a זכות to be speaking here. Big thank you to Rabbi Babayev for helping arrange and everything else. The topic of Genevat is a sensitive one because on the one hand, people know that you can't cheat. That's more or less obvious. But the idea of getting into the subtleties of what's in people's minds and taking advantage of what they don't know is something that we often take for granted, that what's in my mind is my responsibility, and I don't have to disclose the things that I happen to know just because you want to know them. Now, sometimes that's true and sometimes it's not. So, for example, last week I got a call from a cybersecurity company. And a friend of his who's looking for a job in cybersecurity called him up and asked if he's hiring. He said, no, I'm full right now. I'm not looking to hire. So they're schmoozing. And it comes out that this person, this worker, he's currently working for a non-Jewish company. And they're underpaying him. So he asked the boss of this cybersecurity company if he would do him a favor. He said, could you just write me an offer letter of what you would pay me if you were hiring? I'll bring that to my boss, and they'll see I got an offer letter from another company, and he'll give me a raise. That way I'll be getting what I deserve. So the guy called me to find out if there's anything wrong with that, or maybe it's a mitzvah. Here you have a Jew who's working for a non-Jewish company, he's getting underpaid. All he just needs is a piece of paper that's an offer. It doesn't have to be or terms and conditions, everything. It's just a basic, frame of reference. If you would perhaps you'd be interested. Would you be interested under these terms? And then he brings that to his boss, and he gets a raise. Anything wrong with that? So I told him it's a good thing I'm giving a shiur on Genevat, and this is going to be a classic case. It sounds so kosher. He's not lying. There's nothing criminal. He's just going to say, I'm willing to hire you for this amount of dollars, which would be true if he would be hiring. And he's just trying to help the guy get paid what he feels he deserves, the market rate. But the truth is, Halacha, that is asur, that is Genevat. And we'll explain where that comes from and why. In another case, a woman who was, B'ezrat Hashem, she's expecting a baby. And she was still in the earlier stages. It wasn't obvious yet to everyone. But within a week or two, it would become obvious. And she was looking to get a job. So she wanted to know, could she wear to the interview clothing that it's not obvious that she's expecting? Because the minute they catch that she's expecting, that means within 6 weeks, she's going to be taking off for 6 weeks, and maybe 12 weeks if you put the leave afterward. And the insurance, they're going to have to pay for her insurance. So she just wants to wear clothing that's going to somewhat hide the way she looks right now. She'll get the job. And then she'll work there for many years. They'll probably be happy with her in the long term. But in the short term, if they get wind that she's expecting a baby in the near future, they're not going to want her. Is that a problem? She's not going to say one word that's not true. She's just going to show up in clothing that don't disclose something about her that she doesn't want disclosed. Got a different case. The guy called me, he's reaching his 10th anniversary. Now, I don't know how it works here, but in Jersey, where we come from, there's like this thing, that 10th anniversary, there's something called an eternity band. Eternity band is not just one diamond, it's diamonds that go all the way around.
Rabbi, the guys in this room can sell you
Again, so the question was, can he buy his wife a lab-grown eternity band? Because he is not somebody that can afford the regular one is $6,000, $7,000, but now it's probably $10,000, and he's not interested in paying that. He'd rather pay $1,000 for a lab-grown. And we all know that you can't tell the difference between a lab-grown and a natural. Only if you're an expert under a microscope, then you could tell. But for most people, and most women for sure, they don't know the difference. And she'll never know. She'll probably go till her dying day. She'll never, ever know that this is a lab-grown diamond. And together, as a couple, they'll save $6,000, $7,000. So it's a win-win. She'll have the ring that she always dreamed of. She'll walk around feeling like $1 million, and he'll have the $1 million still in his pocket, and everybody will be happy. It'll be shalom. So is there anything wrong with that? What could be wrong? It sounds like such a good idea. It's becoming more and more prevalent. People are charging for services that they claim takes a lot of work, and it's very miyuchad, it's very difficult. And really, they just set up an AI program, and it just pops it out in 30 seconds. And then they send you a bill for all the months of work that they put in to design this program for you. Any problem with that? They're saying you're getting what you wanted. This is a program it's going to be modified and customized just for your business, and this is my price. So could there anything be wrong with that, or even more close to home? You want to send a thank you letter to somebody, or a letter to your wife. So it's too hard to sit and write it out. So you just put it into ChatGPT, and within less than 2 seconds, you have a beautiful letter, a whole poem and everything. And then you tell her how you sweated and you spent months and months planning this out and making everything rhyme. What's the topic at hand, what exactly we're talking about, the tzad hashava of all these things is a question of Genevat da'at. Genevat da'at is something that we have a very hard time translating even. What does it mean to steal somebody's mind? It's not a tangible item. Ironically, in this week's parasha is where we're introduced to the concept by none other than Lavan accusing Yaakov. Lavan accuses Yaakov, "Atiknovet levavi." You stole my heart, you stole my mind. When you decided to run away and not tell me that you're leaving, you stole from me. You stole my mind. So thankfully, in recent history, all these new words come up with the culture. Like selfie didn't used to mean anything a few years ago. Now it's a word that's part of the lingo. So another word that came to light, for better or for worse, is misinformation. Or disinformation. It's a very popular word in modern culture. It's a very helpful word for Genevat da'at, because when you're trying to quantify what exactly Genevat da'at is, it's the idea of planting misinformation for your benefit. You're trying to get a situation that I'm misinforming somebody to my advantage. So that's more or less what Genevat da'at is. So it's defined as Geneva. It's defined as I'm stealing. It's like I'm taking something. But the way I'm doing it is by misinforming you. So it doesn't necessarily have to involve words. It doesn't even have to involve actions. It involves a situation. If I'm creating a situation that I'm misinforming somebody to my advantage, that's going to be the general term of Genevat da'at. Now the Gemara tells us that Genevat da'at applies even to a non-Jew. And not only does it apply to a non-Jew, it even applies to a gift to a non-Jew that the non-Jew is going to misunderstand and be misinformed about. What's the case of the Gemara in Chulin, Daf Tzadi Daled? The Gemara says that if you send a yerech is a thigh of an animal, to a non-Jew. Now, the thigh of an animal is special because within that thigh we have, next week's parasha, the Gidan Hashem. The Gidan Hashem is that sinew, the sciatic nerve, and that's something that Jews are not allowed to eat. So there was a very obvious way of telling if a piece of meat, the thigh of the animal came from a Jewish butcher or a non-Jewish butcher. Because the Jewish butcher would have to cut it in a very specific way in order to get out that Gidan Hashem. Whereas a non-Jewish butcher would just cut it up. They don't care about that particular vein. So the Gemara says that a Jew is not allowed to send that piece of meat to a non-Jew as a gift if it's cut in the way Jews cut it and he did not remove the Gidan Hashem. So again, he's sending something that looks like it's kosher to a non-Jew, and really it's not kosher. Really it's treif. It still has the Gidan Hashem in there. The Gemara says you're not allowed to do that. Why? Because the non-Jew, when he gets, he's going to think that you sent him a piece of meat that's kosher, which is going to convince him that you went to a great length to make this thing kosher just for him. Now, the non-Jew doesn't care if it's kosher or not. But now he thinks that you're his friend. He thinks that you put in extra work just for him. Gemara says you're not allowed to do that. You're misinforming the non-Jew. Now he's going to be makir tov to you. He's going to be grateful to you more than he should be. And that's asur. You're not allowed to do it. And that is brought in Shulchan Aruch, 2 places. You cannot send a non-Jew a piece of meat that he thinks is kasher because he's going to be makir tov. He's going to be grateful to you more than he should be. So it tells us all these things that we need to know. It tells us that Genevat da'at is even if there's no tangible benefit, he's not going to give me anything in return. He's just going to be grateful to me. Still, it's Genevat da'at. And even if we're dealing with a non-Jew, it's still going to be asur. Now, there's no din of chazara. There's no din of returning something once Genevat da'at was done, because we're dealing with something intangible. If I sell you an item that's defective, so it's Genevat da'at when I sell it to you, but it's also Genevat mamon, because I sold you a defective product. So there, I'm going to have to give you back your money, and I'm going to take back the product. So that's not Genevat da'at, that's beyond Genevat da'at, that's Genevat mamon. There's a rule of chazara. You have to return it. You stole something or you took something shelo kedin unjustly, then you have to give it back. Genevat da'at is not like that. If somebody is more grateful to me than they should be, I don't have to return the gratitude. It's not the topic of Genevat da'at. Genevat da'at is it's the action. The problem of Genevat da'at is when I'm doing the situation, I'm setting up the situation, I'm allowing for the situation to happen, that I'm getting your mind, I'm getting your da'at, I'm getting the misinformation across to my benefit. That's when we're discussing, that's when we're in the world of Genevat da'at, and like we're saying, it applies even to a non-Jew. So let's say you have a company, and you're looking for somebody to fill a job. The guy comes in, and he looks good. You're ready to take him, but you don't want him to charge you too much. So you tell him we have 50, 60 applicants. I'll call you back in a couple of weeks. Maybe we'll see if I'll speak to some people. Maybe I can move yours to the top of the pile, but you don't expect a call from me. Now you know good and well, no one else applied. He's the only one that can fit the bill, and you're going to take him regardless. So you're not cheating him directly. Ultimately, you're going to hire him. He's going to take the job, and everything will be fine. But to tell him that, to give him that message that really he's more valuable, he's less valuable than he is, because you have many other applicants, that's Genevat. You're misinforming him so that you'll get an advantage over him. Either that he'll be grateful to you for hiring him more than you should be, or he's going to agree to a lower rate than he would have agreed to because he thinks there's so many applicants. All of that is going to be Genevat, and that's going to be Asur. Now, that sounds very scary because it sounds like you almost can't do business. Everything you say maybe is a misinformation. So you have to realize there is certain information that I'm not hiding something from you, I'm just not giving you access to privileged information. So if you are struggling in business and things aren't going well, and the guy comes and he wants to buy something from you, and if he would know your situation, he would bargain you down. Now, the product that you're giving him is worth every penny that you're going to be asking him for. It's just that if he would know your situation, he would bargain you down, he would take advantage of you. That you don't have to disclose. Because then I'm not misinforming him, I'm allowing him to stay in the level of information that he's supposed to have. I'm not misinforming him, I'm not giving him a different impression that he's supposed to have. I'm not hiding a defect. I'm just not disclosing something that he's not really supposed to know. There's no reason why he's entitled to know that information. In that case, it's going to be mutar. So again, it's going to be, the case by case is going to be sometimes difficult, and when you're going to have a nigiyut, sometimes you're going to have to ask somebody else from the outside who's going to help you decide if this is already on the level that you're misinforming, or is it just that you're protecting personal information, and sometimes it's going to be clear, and sometimes it's not going to be clear, and that's why you're going to have to ask she'elot. It's worth pointing out, there's a smag, Sefer Mitzvot Gadol, who discusses the pasuk, She'erit Yisrael lo ya'asu avla, lo yadaberu chazav. It says the remnants of Israel, that's us, down the end of the generations. Even, it means, the simple meaning is even today, even after it's been so long, we're in Galut. The remnants of Yisrael, lo ya'asu avla. They don't cheat. They don't do things that they shouldn't be doing to others. But also, lo yadaberu chazav. They don't even speak in a way that's deceitful. So the Sefer Mitzvot Gadol, he wants to know, why is it only She'erit Yisrael? All Jews. It's not only the later generations. All generations don't cheat, and all generations don't speak in a way that's deceitful. So he says that it's going to come in the times of Mashiach. Hashem is going to come and he's going to say, oh, the Jews, they're my nation. Come, we're going to take you all back home. And now it's going to be beautiful for the Jews. They're my special children. And he's going to be Mekarev us, and everything's going to be wonderful for us. And the Goyim are going to say, why them? What's so special about them? We're also nice people. We also do good stuff. So it's not going to work to come and tell them, the Jews, you should come. They come to shiurim, and they put on tefillin, and they daven so nicely. The Goyim are not impressed by that. They don't know from these things that's not where they interact with Jews. But when it comes to our business dealings with them, that's when they have a up close interaction with Jews. So there, if we're not going to speak the way we should, if we're just going to settle for speaking the way the non-Jews speak, then they have a ta'ana. Why are the Jews different than the non-Jews? It's because the She'erit Yisrael, us, the remnants of the Jews in the later generations, are so careful in their business dealings with non-Jews that they lo ya'asu avla, they never tried to cheat them, and they also lo yadaberu chazav, they're even careful in the way they speak. That's going to give us the ta'ana to the Goyim when Mashiach comes soon, and he's going to be able to say, that's why we're so different. You saw the way we do. We Jews do business differently. We're not just, okay, just because everybody does it, we do it. That's not how we do business. Okay, so let's get a little bit more into the details and the halachot of Genevat and when it's going to be mutar. So we already said that it's asur to misrepresent, misinform people. If you're making a kiddush and you have a bunch of guys coming, so you put out alcohol and you take a empty bottle of Blue Label, Johnny Walker, and you fill it up with some cheap alcohol, and you put it out to the Havaad, the guest. You say, oh, l'chaim is to do something good. And the guy says, wow, it's so smooth, right? Most people don't know the difference, and they're going to take it as if it's something that's really good. So that's going to be a case of Genevat Da'at. You didn't steal anything from them, but they're going to be makir tov to you, that you gave them something of value, and really you never did. So that's going to be asur. If you gave them something that actually is valuable, but it didn't cost you as much, so that's going to be mutar. So for example, let's say you got a really good deal on a gift. So you paid $30 for it. It sells market rate as $100. So now you come to the bar mitzvah and he has a beautiful wrapped gift, $100 gift, and the person's all grateful. So that's not a problem, because what value did you actually give them? You actually gave them $100. The fact that you got it for cheap doesn't change the value of the item. So if the market value of the item is what it's perceived as, that's not a problem. But if it's a knockoff item, and you're gifting it as if it's real, even if the guy will never know, still it's asur, because then you're not giving him the value that he thinks he's getting, and that's going to be asur. Sometimes, Genevat dat will extend, and it will become Genevat mamon, and it's important to know this. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, Zatzal, has a tshuva about cheating. He was asked if it's mutar to cheat on a state exam. And he says, of course, Jews would never do such a thing. A Jew would never do such a thing as cheat on a state exam. But he says, not only is that cheating, in many cases, you're not just cheating the examiner. You're cheating all the future clients that you're going to be servicing. If somebody cheats his way through medical school, so now he wears his beautiful his lab coat, and now he's a doctor. But he didn't actually take the courses that were expected of him. So it's not just that he cheated the guy by handing in a false exam that he used AI for, or he's some other way that he handed in. That's not the issue. It's part of the issue. But now it's much more than that. Every time you service a client who comes thinking that he's seeing a real doctor, and really he's seeing a scam, he's seeing a fraud, so you're cheating them. Well, you have no right to charge this guy $200. You have no right to be servicing him altogether as a medical doctor if you're not a legitimate medical doctor. So you have to be careful that sometimes your cheating, your Genevat dat in the short term could evolve into a much bigger Genevat mamon in the long term. Now, sometimes I'm going to have this today. Today I'm here, Baruch Hashem, giving a shiur, and what could be better? It's definitely worth a trip from Lakewood to give a shiur. I also have a wedding in North Jersey in the afternoon. So I plan on going from here, and I'm going to be going to this wedding. Now, for me to go from Lakewood to a wedding in North Jersey is very rare. It's not something I would usually do. When I walk in there, the Baal Simcha is going to say, oh wow, you came all the way from Lakewood, amazing, I'm so touched. Now, what do I do now? Do I have to tell him that it's not true? I came to give a shiur or not? So really it's a Gemara. The Gemara has such a case, again, Mechun Dav Tzadidal, there's on Amud Bais. The Gemara says that there were two Amoraim who were taking a walk outside their city, and on their way, they greet somebody, another big Amora, another big person from the Gemara. He meets them, and he sees two people coming out to greet him, two big Amoraim on the path. He says, oh, they must have come out to greet me. So he says, wow, you didn't have to do this. You didn't have to come all this way. So he's so touched. Wow, you came all just to greet me. So one of them, of the greeting party, who didn't come out to greet him, was Rav Safra. Rav Safra. Now, if you know what Rav Safra is famous for in Gemara, which is a different Gemara in Makot, Rav Safra, his midah was dover emet bilvavo. He was honest, not just in his speech, he was honest even in his mind. The case that Midrash brings down, why he was called this and why this is his midah, is that one time he was in the market, he had something to sell, and it was in his mind, it was for sale for a certain price. But then it came time to daven, and he started saying Kriyat Shema. And he was saying Kriyat Shema, he couldn't be mafsik. While he's saying Kriyat Shema, a non-Jew comes up to him and offers to buy the product. I don't know if it was non-Jew, it doesn't say it was non-Jew. Someone, a customer came up and offered to buy the product for the price that he thought was fair. But if Safra was in the middle of Kriyat Shema, so he didn't say anything. So what do you do if you don't get a response from the seller? You raise the price. So the customer went up. Still he doesn't say anything. So he went up again. I'm sure Safra said a nice long Kriyat Shema. I'm sure he was very careful with taking every word. And by the time he got Shem Elokim Emet, so by that time he could have made a fortune. And he turns to the guy, and by that time the guy was probably getting frustrated, but he really wanted this item. And he tells him, I really was willing to sell it to you at the earliest price. It's just I couldn't talk. But since in my mind I already committed to selling it for the earlier price, I'm going to give it to you for the lower price. He didn't want to be contradictory even in his own heart. In his mind, he already made a commitment, And since in his mind he already made a commitment, he didn't want to go against that commitment. Now, just as an aside almost, it doesn't mean that every time you decide that you're going to go shopping in one store, that now you're mechuyav to go shop in that store and you're not allowed to go to a different store, you can't change your mind. So we're going to go to this restaurant. No, I already thought I was going to go to that restaurant. It's about commitments. It's that in your mind you already made a commitment to someone, so you don't want to go against that commitment even in your own mind. That's not a halacha, it's midat chasidut to do that. It's a very high level, but that was Rav Safra. Rav Safra Zidoved met bilvavo. In his mind, he committed to it, so that's it. He stuck to his commitment because that's what was going on in his mind. So, back to our story. Rav Safra, together with Rava, they're going on the path, and they meet this other big gaon who's on his way into the city. And this gaon says, "Wow, I'm so touched that you guys came out to greet me." So Rav Safra, true to his nature, true to his midah, he says, I hate to break it to you. He says, "I'm sorry, but we didn't come out special. We just came, we were on the way out of the city. He said, had we known, we for sure would have come to greet you, but we didn't even know that you were coming." So, fine. So the other one's disappointed, and they move on. After they leave, so the one he was walking with, Havaad, tells Rav Safra, "Why'd you say anything? You should have kept quiet." Now he feels bad. Had you kept quiet, he would have felt better. So Rav Safra says, "What do you mean? How could I not tell him? That would be Genevat. If I would have just left him with his mistaken assumption that we came out special to meet him, that's Genevat. I had to disclose. How could I not disclose?" So Rava says a very interesting thing. He agrees with Rav Safra that not disclosing is Genevat, even though you did nothing, even though you're just minding your own business, and the other person got the wrong assessment, or wrong assumption, that would be Genevat. But he says this case is different. Why? He says, "Iu da'ata nafshei." He fooled himself. We didn't fool him. He fooled himself. He jumped to a conclusion. So now, what does that mean? And how do we apply that? There's a machloket rishonim, which we're not going to go into now. There's 3 different opinions. But the way the halacha is like this, that if you send the thigh that we spoke about before, the yerech, the meat, to the non-Jew, and it's cut the way Jews cut it. So he said that's asur, that's Genevat, because the non-Jew now he's going to be makir tov. He thinks that you sent him something that's kasher. He thinks you like him a lot, and that's not true. So you have to tell him. Even though you didn't say anything, that's asur. Why? Because what's the rule? If you walk into a Jew's home, and he gives you a piece of meat, do you have to ask him, "Excuse me, is this kasher? Where'd you buy this meat?" He's going to be very insulted, right? If I'm giving you, I'm Jewish, I'm giving you meat, obviously it's kosher. What type of question is that? And he'd be right. Because if somebody is a from Jew, is an Orthodox Jew, and he gives you food, you're allowed to assume that it's kosher, because a Jew is not allowed to give something that's not kosher. When a Jew releases food to someone else, you have to assume that, you're allowed to assume that it's kosher, because he wouldn't be allowed to give you something that's not kosher. So when the non-Jew receives this piece of meat from the Jew, he has every right to assume that it's kosher. Since he has every right to assume that it's kosher, if it's not kosher, you're tricking him, you're misinforming, and he'll have to disclose. But if I'm walking outside of my city, and I happen to meet you, so then there's no reason for you to assume I came out special. There could be 1,000 reasons why I'm coming out of the city. If there could be a bunch of reasons why I'm coming out, and you decided that the real reason is because I came to visit you or I came to greet you, that's on you. You jumped to a conclusion that's unwarranted. Since you jumped to a conclusion that's unwarranted, I did not do a geneva. Remember, Genevat is about I am misinforming you. Over here, did I misinform you? I didn't misinform you. The situation didn't even misinform you. You misinformed yourself. You jumped to a conclusion that was completely not built into the situation, and you decided that that's the way it is. I don't have to dispel you of that notion. So let's take a case of a simcha. You're going to a simcha that you would not have gone to special, but you happen to be in the area for a business meeting or whatever. So you go into say Mazal Tov, and the person says, "Oh wow, I can't believe you came all this way." So it really depends where the simcha is located and what the logic would be for you to be there. If it's a far out kind of place, that it just happens to be that you're in the area, but normally there's no reason for the guy to think that you have any other reason to be there other than for his simcha, and he says, "Wow, you came all this way," you're going to have to say, "I'm sorry, but I didn't come special for you. I was here anyway. I came for a different thing." But if it's a place, let's say you happen to be in Lakewood for a simcha, and once you're there, okay, there's another person making a simcha, so you go to his also. There's a lot of smachot in Lakewood. There's 10 wedding halls or 12 wedding halls, and they're all full just about every single night. For someone to decide that you came special just for him, he's being a little silly. He's jumping to a conclusion that's not warranted. There could be many reasons why you are in a major Jewish city. So in that case, if he decided to jump to that conclusion, you would not have to tell him that you didn't come special. Now, it's a word of advice, because this comes up. So you go to visit someone in the hospital. While you're there, you want to visit somebody else, or something like that. So you end up in a situation where the person is going to be upset if you tell him, if you break the news to him that he didn't come special. But it's not his fault. He wasn't expecting, he has no reason to think that you have some other reason to be there. So there's one thing you could say that works every time. Instead of telling him, no, I didn't come special for you, I came for some other reason, I just happened to come to your wedding, now he's insulted. You tell him, HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves you so much, he orchestrated that I should be here. He worked it out because he loves you, that he made it that I should have a business conference in Chicago just so that I could be at your simcha. You tell him that he'll feel great. Because now he knows that Hashem loves him, not just you love him, not just are you happy to be at his simcha, Hashem made it that you should come. So that's something it's a good tip, keep it in your pocket, it works every time. You say, no, you don't just say, I didn't come special. You say, of course, I'm so happy to be here. Hashem Yisbarach worked it out that I should be at your simcha. He made it that this person should also be in the hospital just so that I should come visit you. And that makes people feel better. Now, there is another hetet for Genevat, and that is if you really would have done it anyway. For this kind of situation of Genevat, if you really would have come special, then even though the guy doesn't know that you have the other thing in town, and he has no reason to think they have some other thing in town, since you know that you would have come special for this guy's simcha, then you don't have to tell him, well, it happens to be I also have another simcha that I came for. I also have another reason why I'm in town. Because since it's true that you really would have come for him, so then there's no misinformation happening. He really should be makir tov to you. You really did come special for him. And you also have some other things to be here for. That by itself is not a problem. Now, the question becomes, what about if it's just about who I am? I'm not misinforming you about a specific product. I'm misinforming you about who I am. What if a guy wants to dress up as a very wealthy person? He's going to go hang out among all the wealthy people, and he's really not so wealthy. He goes to, they have these hotels on Pesach, and people come, they come dressed with a few $1,000 suits and fancy watches. And if you'd see them at home, they don't wear these clothes. He's just doing it because this is where the big people are, and this is how you get the deals. So he's misinforming about who he is. He's not misinforming about any of the products that he's trying to sell. He's just misinforming about the person that he is. So that, there is a Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says that if someone is getting kavod, as if he knows two mesechtot of Gemara, and he knows that really he only knows one, he has to disclose. He has to tell them, I'm not such a big Talmid Chacham. I only know one mesechta, I don't know two. That's Yerushalmi. The question is if that practical halacha, and does it always apply? So most poskim assume that it does not. The reason is, could be a few reasons, but the basic idea is that when I'm not misinforming you about the actual deal we're discussing, there's a surrounding thing that you're just not understanding who I am. That doesn't change the deal. It doesn't change what's happening in the deal I'm doing. If I'm bringing you a good brokerage deal, so it's a good brokerage deal. The fact that you don't talk to people who don't look like they're worth $30 million, so that's an assessment that you decided to make, but it doesn't change the product that you're getting. Since there's no difference to the product that you're getting, that is not a misinformation, and that's going to be mutar. So why is the Yerushalmi saying that the guy has to inform that he doesn't know so much Torah? Disclosure, I'm not sure exactly what he said, but disclosure, maybe I don't know as much as the impression he gave. What is a dangerous shield to give here? When it comes to Torah, it might be different. Because when somebody actually is a Talmid Chacham, it's not just a nice thing to give him kavod, it's a chiyuv to give him kavod. The Torah says you have to be mechabed, not just the Torah, also the lomdeh, also the people who know the Torah. So if someone is giving the impression that he knows two mesechtot or he knows the whole Shas, and it's not true, so you are mechuyav to give him kavod as if he knows the whole Shas, and it's not true. So there, it's almost like a Genevat. He's actually taking kavod that he's not entitled to, and it's something that you have to give him. So that's much closer to a Genevat. Whereas if somebody looks like he's worth $30 million and he's really not, you don't owe him anything. You don't owe him kavod, you don't owe him any deals. It's just that you might just be more inclined to do business with him than you would if he's not worth that, or he doesn't look like he's worth that. That by itself is not asur. Sometimes it will rise to the level of a scam, and if it's a scam, it is asur. So like we said before, if you're going to dress up like a doctor, and you say, well, I Googled everything, and I'm a really good doctor. So that's still a scam. because there, the product that you're delivering is not the right product. The guy thinks he's getting a product of a doctor, and you are not a doctor. So in that case, it will be asur. And sometimes if a guy has nothing to do with wealth, nothing to do with business, and he's going to talk and walk and give it the impression that he's got deals going on and things are happening, at that point, he's a scam. And a scam that is asur, and it's, again, the exact line is not always going to be obvious, sometimes you have to ask. But in a general sense, if it's just about who you are, that's going to be fine. It may not be the biggest ma'ala. If you want to be a true person, you want to be true to your personality, you don't want to be dressing up as somebody who you aren't, but it's not going to be asur under Genevat because I'm not misinforming you about the deal, about the product. If it is already the product, if it is already the deal, that could be asur. Now, that sometimes leads to some very sticky situations. What happens when it comes to shidduchim? It comes to shidduchim, and sometimes a guy has some issue going on, or I have a girl and she's, there's pictures go around and she wants to send a picture that's not exactly the way she looks. And the question then becomes, is that Genevat dat? He never would have agreed to date this girl. She never would have agreed to such a shidduch, to even consider such a shidduch. And because you hid this information, now you'll get your foot through the door, and now the thing's going to start. So the simple thing would be is that if they're being misinformed, it should be asur, because the product is the person. She's marrying him, he's marrying her, you're the product. So to misinform for that normally should be asur. What could be the heter? So first of all, when it comes to all marketing, you're allowed to look your best. Looking your best is not a fraud, and it's not Genevat dat. Especially in situations where you're expected to look your best. There, if you don't look your best, then you're lying, because the person's expecting to see the best. So every time you're putting out an ad about a product, if you're not going to take the best picture of the product, then you're scamming your customers, because they're expecting the ad to look the best. They're not expecting it the way it looks on an average day after it was used 10 times. So for marketing, you're expected to make the thing look the best way it could look. You can't make it look better than it looks. That's already misinforming. But if you're going to not make it look its best, that is not the way the ad is supposed to look. So if someone's expecting it to look a certain way, so then it's not going to be Genevat dat to make it look that way, even though there's a spectrum. They don't all look like this product. They don't all look so perfect. They don't, when you're eating this product and you're driving this car, you're not going to look like the guy in the ad who looks so relaxed and everything is like life is perfect. Just because you're driving that car doesn't mean you're going to look that way. But still, they're allowed to portray it that way, because the point is that this is what it could encompass. This is what it could do for you. So the first thing when it comes to shidduchim is that you're allowed to put forth your best foot. You're allowed to look the best. You're allowed to act the best. You're not fooling them if you're on your best behavior. On the contrary, if you're not on your best behavior, then they're going to assume that when you're really on a regular day, you're 10 times worse. So that by itself is not going to be a problem. What if you want to make it look a little better just to get your foot through the door? So there is a heter, and it has to be used very carefully, that sometimes for the sake of a mitzvah, you're allowed to open up a situation. Now you can't scam someone in the actual product. You can't go into a marriage with a flaw that is the kind of flaw that should undo a marriage. There are certain flaws that you're considered not marriageable unless the person knows beforehand. Certain real medical issues or even psychological issues, and those, unfortunately, in the Bais Havaad we see many gitin, because people went into marriages without disclosing what they should disclose. So definitely, if there's a real issue, there's a real situation, then you speak to a rabbi to know exactly what to disclose, how to disclose, when to disclose, but make sure it's disclosed before it leads to disaster. But there's many other things that don't rise to that level, that if the other side would know about, they probably wouldn't want to get involved. But you want to start the relationship, and once you're in the relationship, it'll come up, and then you or they will decide if it's something they want to live with. So there, this Stipler says that it's mutar. He has a tshuva about someone who had a medical issue that made it that according to Halacha, it was questionable if he's allowed to marry a Jewish girl. Now, Halacha, the psak was that he was allowed to, but it was a question, which meant that anyone marrying this guy would be relying on a heter. It wasn't lechatchila, it was questionable. So it was mutar, but it was questionable. So the question was, first of all, is that a mekach ta'ut if he actually goes into such a marriage? But the second question was, does he have to disclose it up front? And the Stipler says you don't have to. And what he tries to describe there, it's a little hard to define, but he tries to describe there more or less, is that sometimes you're dealing with a product that's bigger than any one thing. And if it's bigger than any one thing, if I'm going to disclose this specific thing, you're going to be zooming in on just that, and you're not going to be able to see the bigger picture. In that case, I'm allowed to not disclose it earlier, just so that I make sure you get the whole picture. When you're dealing with a person, it's not just their flaw. People have benefits, they have good things, they have ma'alot, and they also have chesronot. If I'm only going to walk into a date and say, okay, these are my chesronot, I do this, I do that, I do that, then she's not going to want to deal with you because she's never going to see your ma'alot. So you're allowed to not disclose, in certain cases, you're allowed to not disclose just so we can get this thing started, so that you'll see the whole picture. And when you see the whole picture, then you'll have a much better way of deciding if this is something you care about. So therefore, that non-disclosure in the beginning is not seen as a non-disclosure, it's just a better way of getting you to see the true picture. In that case, it's going to be mutar, and this comes up with, let's say, you're trying to sell a building, trying to sell a house, and you know there's certain chesronot with the house, certain chesronot with the building, that if you tell them up front, they're going to walk right out the front door. So you have a similar idea, that you don't necessarily have to disclose it up front. You can't go into the sale with them not knowing it, because depending on the case, but if it's the kind of thing that undoes a sale, the kind of thing that people normally would be makpid on, then before the sale you'll have to disclose it. But you don't have to put it on the flyer. And you don't have to tell the guy when he comes to the open house doing the walkthrough, oh, you should know the roof is leaking and it's within 2 years you have to replace the roof. You don't have to do that up front. Ultimately, you may have to disclose. There is a related thing when it comes to mekach ta'ut of something that's normal to check for. If it's normal for the buyer to check for, then also I don't have to disclose. Because I have the right to assume that either he checked for it, and if he doesn't care. So if it's something that is normal to hire an inspector for, and the inspector would normally see it, then the seller is not going to have to disclose it because I'm not tricking you, I'm not misinforming you, I'm giving you the product the way it's supposed to be. Now if you are makpid that it shouldn't have a leaky roof, you're makpid that the boiler should be new, so then that's something that your inspector is supposed to check for, and I don't have to get involved. Even if I know the roof leaks, I don't have to tell you about it, because the assumption is that the inspector is going to check for it, and if you choose not to hire an inspector, then I have the right to assume you're probably just ripping down the house, because why wouldn't you hire an inspector? Why wouldn't you do the normal due diligence that people always do? Again, assuming that it's something that normal due diligence would come up with, and assuming the inspector would do his job, so then I can assume he's going to check, and even though I happen to know he didn't check, I have the right to assume that he doesn't care. If I know for sure he does care and he's an oversight, so then you often will have to disclose, you'll have to ask a specific sha'ala. So let's just finish up here. Let's go through quickly the cases we started with. The first case, a guy wants to get a fake letter saying that he got an offer letter for a certain amount of money so that his non-Jewish employer will give him a raise. I think that's asur. If the Jewish guy might actually hire him, if he has a real possibility even that he might hire the guy, so then he can give him the offer letter with a higher rate, and then he has every right to either take the job or not take the job or go to his employer and get a raise. But if I have no intent whatsoever on hiring this guy, I'm just giving him a fake letter with a higher rate just so he can go negotiate with his employer and get a higher rate, that's Genevat. You're purposely misinforming the non-Jewish employer, and you have no right to do that. And even if he's underpaying him, a non-Jew is allowed to underpay his Jewish employee. Between Jews, you're not allowed to underpay your workers, and you're not allowed to underpay for products, you're not allowed to overpay. You're allowed to overpay, you can't overcharge for your stuff. That's among Jews. But between a Jew and a non-Jew, there's no sort of ona'ah for a non-Jew. He's allowed to underpay his Jewish worker if both of them agree. He's allowed to underpay him, so he's not doing anything wrong, the non-Jew. So therefore, you're not allowed to give him this fake document just to give him negotiating leverage over his employee. If it's not true, that would be Genevat dat. Now, buying your wife a lab-grown ring, even if she'll never know, that should be classic Genevat dat. Even though she'll never know about it, and she'll feel great that she got this $10,000 ring, and really it's only $1,000. Still, it's asur. She's going to be makir tov. She's going to be grateful to you unjustly. You don't deserve a sakarat tov. So even though you're saying it's for her benefit, because now you'll have more money and you'll be able to use it for other things, still that is Genevat dat. That's going to be asur. What about hiding a pregnancy for a job interview? So that is there's a little bit of dina d'mechusat dina they have to consider over there, because they're not allowed to discriminate. At least from the last I checked, the law is you're not allowed to discriminate due to their personal thing, their body and things like that. So if they would not give you the job based on your pregnancy, that would be against the dina d'mechusat dina. That would be against secular law. So for sure, if you're dealing with a non-Jewish employer, you would not have to disclose it, since they're not allowed to discriminate based on your physique. So you don't have to give them information that will allow them to discriminate based on your physique. So you know good and well that if you come there wearing maternity, they're going to find some other reason why you're not the best applicant and hire somebody else. So then you would be allowed to hide it from them because they're not allowed to discriminate, so therefore you're allowed to hide it. But otherwise, if it was a Jewish employer, then it would not be simple at all to hide such a thing if you know it's going to be to their detriment. But how it works among Jews, that you'll have to invite me back for. That's a little bit more of a complicated topic. If a guy walks into your store and you tell him, well, for you, this is the price. So is that Genevat dat? So the truth is it's not. If it's just a negotiating thing and it just means that I'm giving you this price and we all know that that's what it means, so the Gemara says that's not a lie and that's not a misinformation. The Gemara says that you're allowed to walk into the shuk and you say, this thing, there's no way in the world, I promise I'm not paying more than $10 for this thing. You know good and well that you're going to pay $30 for it if necessary. You're allowed to say that because that's just the way we negotiate. It's the way we talk. So once it becomes a figure of speech, then it's mutad, it's not Genevat dat. So that idea of, oh, for you, I give you a good price. If you're dealing with the kind of society that's the normal way to talk, it's completely mutad because that's just a figure of speech. We all know that means that if it was someone else, you'd give them a better price and you think I can afford it, so you're charging me this high price. That's what for you means. So therefore, it's not considered cheating, and that would be mutad. If he's really being taken for a ride, you say, oh, if you're my Sammy's son, for you, I'll give you a job for you. So that, if he's being misinformed, so at that point, it could be, goes into the realm of Genevat dat, you have to be careful. Using AI, nowadays, I think it's expected. So if someone, if there's something that could be done normally with, using the normal AI tools that are available today, and the person gets this beautiful thank you letter, if he doesn't think that it came from AI, then he's the one being matan nafshe. He's fooling himself. If you get any basic programming or basic writing or those kind of things, if you don't think it's AI, then I think it's on the person. He's fooling himself. By now, I think it goes into the realm of atan nafshe. He's fooling himself. Again, he can't overcharge. If it's a Jew, he can't overcharge for your product. So if the market rate has already gone down because it could be done by AI, then you can't still be charging the higher rate. That would be ona'ah. But as far as Genevat dat, the assumption nowadays is that if you're living in today's world, the assumption probably is that you did use AI, and I think that would not be a problem to use AI and take the credit for it. If the person says, wow, I can't believe you wrote this beautiful poem just for me, you're not going to have to set them straight because that would be considered fooling themselves. Okay, I think we'll stop there. Should be with continued zchut with the fact that we are careful with the way we speak and careful the way we present ourselves. We should be that she'erit Yisrael that the Navi is proud of. That we're lo ya'asu avla, lo yidabru chazav, and that way we'll always be honest to ourselves, honest with our spouses, with our children, with Hashem Yisbarach, and we'll be zochet to be the ones that greet Mashiach. Amen.